CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Welcome to our special coverage of the China Central Asia Summit. I'm Li Chuan, coming to you live in Beijing. Our top story this hour, leaders of the 5 Central Asian nations, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, arrived at the venue earlier today. They were hosted and welcomed by Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife, Madam Peng Liyuan. And after arriving, the heads of state gathered on stage, took a group photo, and watched 2 short performances. They are also scheduled to attend a banquet and watch a gala performance. Let's now bring in my colleague Dai Kai. He is joining us live from Xi'an. Great to see you there, Kai. Now, the Central Asia Summit officially kicks off today. We have a state banquet going on now. Tell us more about what has happened on the first day so far.
Of course, Choyuan, tonight President Xi Jinping hosts a welcome ceremony and a banquet for leaders of 5 Central Asian countries. It's a grand celebration, and artists from both China and Central Asian countries performed jointly. So it's after a tight schedule of the day when President Xi Jinping met with heads of state from 5 Central Asian countries and held in-depth talks concerning China's relationship with them. One of the key words here is connectivity. For example, in meeting with the president of Kyrgyzstan, President Xi actually said that both countries should strengthen mutual support and called for promoting the pragmatic cooperation across various fields. He also spoke of the need to enhance connectivity and start the construction of China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan railway at an early date. And also in talks with Tajikistan's President Xi talked about how they should deepen cooperation in terms of economy and trade, agriculture, connectivity, as well as closer people-to-people exchanges. And also on Thursday, the Chinese president met with his counterparts in Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. So leaders from the Central Asian countries spoke highly of the development of the relations with China over the years. They echoed President Xi's remarks, and they said they stand ready to work with China to further that cooperation to the next level. And after the meeting, multiple bilateral documents were signed and joint declarations and statements were signed, and it's expected that more agreements of such kind would be signed tomorrow. Experts believe that the summit would foster the cooperation between China and 5 Central Asian countries, opening up a new chapter in their partnership. Back to you in the studio, Julia.
A lot to look forward to tomorrow as well. As you were speaking there, we were showing some of the pictures of that welcome ceremony featuring traditional dance performances. Magnificent. Thank you very much, Kai, joining us live from Xi'an. Thanks so much. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping held talks with President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev of Kazakhstan on Wednesday. Tokayev is in China for China Central Asia Summit and a state visit. Xi Jinping said China and Kazakhstan have successfully cooperated on dozens of important projects since he proposed the Belt and Road Initiative 10 years ago. Tokayev said Kazakhstan is ready to work with China to further strengthen their permanent comprehensive strategic partnership. And after the talks, the 2 heads of state signed a joint statement and witnessed the signing of a raft of agreements, including trade, energy, and agriculture. And on Thursday, Xi Jinping met his Tajik counterpart, Emomali Rahmon, in Xi'an. Xi Jinping hailed the development of bilateral ties with Tajikistan into a comprehensive strategic partnership. President Rahmon acknowledged the 2 sides' mutual respect and support for each other and reiterated his government's adherence to the One China principle. He said Tajikistan is willing to deepen cooperation with China in areas like trade, agriculture, and the green economy. And after the meeting, the 2 sides signed a joint declaration. China and Tajikistan have issued a joint declaration following bilateral talks.
They agreed to integrate parts of the Belt and Road Initiative and Tajikistan's National Development Strategy 2030. The 2 countries also pledged to expand trade and build a digital Silk Road. China pledges to increase agricultural imports from Tajikistan and provide preferable loans to its social and infrastructure projects. And Tajikistan says it wants China to help improve its high-speed internet and telecommunications network. Both sides have pledged to collaborate on anti-terrorism efforts.
Xi Jinping also met leaders of Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. During Xi's meeting with his Kyrgyz counterpart Sadir Japarov, the two presidents announced an upgrade of bilateral ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership. Xi Jinping said China and Kyrgyzstan should strengthen mutual support and provide strong support to each other. He called for pragmatic cooperation with high-quality development under the Belt and Road Initiative. And also on Thursday, he met with Turkmenistan's president, Sardar Berdimuhamedov. She recalled Muhammadov's state visit to China in January when they announced a comprehensive strategic partnership. Xi Jinping said China is ready to continue advancing the relationship. And President Xi also held talks with Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. And she noted that he visited Uzbekistan last September and was warmly welcomed by his counterpart. They agree on a commitment to build a community with a shared future. President Xi said China is ready to deepen all-round cooperation. China and Kyrgyzstan have signed a joint declaration aiming to establish a comprehensive strategic partnership for a new era.
The joint statement includes supporting each other's national sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity, and the expansion of communications and exchanges from provincial to local regional levels. It also mentions improving cooperation in information sharing, border control, and security, and the promotion of economic, trade, investment, and connectivity cooperation. The declaration also highlights the creation of a smooth operation highway, improved cross-border logistics, and increased tourism cooperation.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has held a bilateral meeting with his Turkmen counterpart, Sardar Berdimuhamedov. And President Xi says that China is willing to work with Turkmenistan to continuously advance bilateral relations for the benefit of the two peoples. The Turkmen president said that Turkmenistan attaches great importance to Chinese relations and is willing to further strengthen its comprehensive strategic partnership on the basis of mutual respect, equality, and mutual benefit. In January, China and Turkmenistan announced that they would upgrade their relations to a comprehensive strategic partnership, opening a new chapter in bilateral relations. And China is Uzbekistan's biggest trading partner, and freight trains have become the major means of transporting goods between the two nations. In the second episode of Close Neighbors series, our Zhao Yunfei finds out how exporters are benefiting from the infrastructure.
The hustle and bustle at Chorsu Bazaar. It's a market that fulfills daily necessities in Tashkent and also is a display of Uzbekistan's cultural identity. Even if you don't buy anything at the Chorsu Bazaar, the vendors will encourage you to try some dry fruits. They're proud of what they're selling, and dry fruits are also major export products to China. Walnuts, dried apricots, and raisins. Uzbekistan exporters sell large quantities of dried fruits to China to meet the growing demand.
O'zbekistondan eksport bo'lgan mahsulot.
Products exported from Uzbekistan will go through a reprocessing process in China. The new products can enter another country's market. In this case, the relationship between Uzbekistan and China will be stronger.
Shipping by train can take about 2 weeks. In China's Zhengzhou, almost half of its China-Europe freight trains go to Central Asia. Due to the rising trade volume, exporters have to compete for space. This container yard in central China is filled with goods. There's one train carrying some 50 containers to Tashkent almost every other day.
The number of China-Europe freight trains is increasing. The goods are more diverse, and the route is connecting more and more countries.
Home appliances and raw materials are the major export products from China to Uzbekistan. The cargo senders and receivers choose freight trains based on efficiency and price.
If it is going to Central Asia, there is no great advantage in sea transportation. The inland region has no seaport. The railway will have a natural advantage. The trains exit the border from Xinjiang and soon will arrive in the 5 Central Asian countries.
A train network connecting Central China and Central Asia. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN.
All right, let me bring in our guests, Professor Wang Xinsong and Ms. Han Hua. So we're standing by for that live performances after the state leaders finished their state dinner. So let's talk a little bit about cooperation between China and Central Asian countries. Professor Wang earlier mentioned that, China Central Asia is an important energy supplier to China, actually, and residents here in Beijing and Shanghai can actually use gas from Turkmenistan. That's a great example of tangible benefits cooperation has brought to other peoples. What can we look out for in the future? What kind of cooperation projects are in store there?
Well, energy trade is still going to be a very important focal point between China and Central Asia, and given the fact that Chinese economy is also turning greener and greener, and gas obviously is a greener source of energy than coal, and that's why we've been paying a lot of attention to importing natural gas from many of the countries. And like I said earlier, pipeline gas is less risky and also cheaper in comparison to LNG that has to be shipped usually through ocean shipping lanes, which then makes the transportation subject to geopolitical threats, possible threats. That's why, we are dealing with imported natural gas and oil from the Middle East by help building the port of Gwadar in Pakistan, so that eventually there is a possibility that we can cut short the sea shipping lane to make the transportation of energy less riskier. But again, like I said earlier, I think the pipeline gas is going to continue to be a focal point. But at the same time, we noticed that the Central Asian countries are also transitioning their economy to be greener. And this is a global trend to make the world development more sustainable. That's why China is also investing very heavily in Central Asian countries for this green transition. And by the way, like Wang Guan said, in countries like Tajikistan and Kazakhstan, out of 365 days a year, nearly 300 days are sunny days. And the Kazakhstan president called the country a sun belt. And their counterpart to Belt and Road Initiative is called Bright Road. This is naming after their sunny days. So that means there can be a lot of solar energy sources to be taken advantage of. But all of that needs know-how, needs capital investments, and which China has a lot of know-how in, for example, building solar panels. China also is, especially the private businesses, are now eyeing on the market, growing market of green transition in Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and other Central Asian countries. But at the same time, we need to understand that the green transition is only a small part of the national economy at this moment. Green energy only accounts for about 3% of national GDP, which means that these countries are still relying very heavily on traditional energy sources like coal, which is very pollutive. So all of that is saying that this is a long shot. Still, the market is very prospective, and China is very busily engaged in helping the Central Asian countries to transition to a greener economy.
And Ms. Han, you work closely with teams from these countries with regard to Belt and Road Initiative. You're an expert on this. What are some of the Belt and Road projects that seem to stand out to you the most?
One of the most important projects that is regenerated or gaining its momentum is this railroad between China, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. So I'm thinking that this will bear a lot of hope from all these three countries, and from these three countries extending to the other countries. I noticed that during the bilateral meetings between Chinese President Xi Jinping and the head of states of the other 5 countries, at least the bilateral relationship is positioned as a comprehensive strategic partnership. So this laid a very solid foundation, because the comprehensive strategic partnership means the mutual trust, back-to-back relationship, in my opinion. So this involves a lot of long-term investment, capital involved, people involved, labor intensive involved. So this must have a mutual trust relationship or foundation to lay such a grand strategic plan for both parties. So regarding the energy investment, like the solar panels manufacturing, regarding the people-to-people exchange, all the way to the railroad build up, these all needs this kind of mutual trust. So down the road for the Belt and Road Initiative, I noticed that even it was initiated and proposed in the Central Asian countries, actually for the past 10 years, we saw a lot of projects initiated and development in some other countries, like in Europe, in Africa, in even Latin American countries. So the Central Asian countries, I think they are catching up in this Belt and Road Initiative with a lot of infrastructure building, and to make the Belt and Road Initiative into a greener version, into a more digital version. So this creates a lot of potential. Wang Guan just shared his personal story of using Pinduoduo in Kazakhstan. And when I was leaving Uzbekistan 2 weeks ago, I went to the bazaar just like your colleague Zhao Yunfei did. I bought a lot of walnuts and also some apricots. And I also noticed that, and also proved by the local people, that the cherries from Uzbekistan is also very good, very famous, but they need this kind of freight trains as well as other infrastructure to help shipping the cherries to China, to Chinese market. So this is just a very small story of the digital economy, how digital economy can help enhance the Belt and Road Initiative between China and the Central Asian countries. Of course, there are a lot of other cooperation potentials with Belt and Road Initiative, including but not limited to financial institutions cooperation, the using of RMB instead of dollars in the trade settlement, as well as the poverty alleviation, because both China and these Central Asian countries, we are still agricultural economies. So we have a lot to learn from each other, and we need these agricultural products from these Central Asian countries, and these countries also maybe need some of the agricultural products from China as well. I noticed that China is also the #1 trading partner of Uzbekistan. So it is believed that maybe China can be also the #1 trading partners with all these Central Asian countries as well.
The markets are quite complementary from both sides. Thank you very much. Stay with me. China and 5 Central Asian nations, namely Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, have long worked together as partners to address regional security threats. Now, their efforts have also been conducted within multilateral frameworks, such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Conference on Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia. CGTN's Gao Yiming reports.
Tackling security threats has been a priority for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization since its founding back in 2001. China and 4 of the 5 Central Asian nations are among the founding members and take up over half of the seats in the group. The SCO Establishment Declaration says the member states will cooperate closely to implement the Shanghai Convention on Combating Terrorism, Separatism, and Extremism. Over the years, China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, along with other member states, have also signed a series of agreements that aim to promote peace and regional security. Since 2002, member countries have also held at least 14 joint exercises with focuses on anti-terrorism and peace building. China and the 5 Central Asian nations are also part of the Intergovernmental Forum, Conference on Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia, also known as the CICA. The forum was first proposed by Kazakhstani President Nursultan Nazarbayev in October 1992 at the 47th session of the United Nations General Assembly, with the aim of enhancing cooperation towards promoting peace, security, and stability in Asia. China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan are member states, while Turkmenistan is an observer state. Back in 2014, at the 4th CICA summit in Shanghai, Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed a new Asian security concept, with aims to advocate common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security in Asia.
He called for respecting and ensuring the security of all countries and said no country should attempt to dominate regional security affairs or infringe upon the legitimate rights and interests of other countries.
With the changing of times, we cannot let ourselves still stay in a Cold War mindset. We should promote a sustainable security outlook on Asia by upholding the ideas of commonality and cooperation.
2022 marked the 30 years of diplomatic relations between China and the 5 Central Asian nations. In the keynote speech to mark the friendship milestone, President Xi stressed the need to strengthen the shield among the 6 countries for defending peace. He called for them to work together to continue to combat terrorist, extremist, and separatist forces, deepen cooperation in areas such as border management and control, and work together to strengthen the regional security net. Leaders of the 5 Central Asian nations also affirmed standing for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of each other and China, and together addressing regional challenges and safeguarding the security and strategic interests of the 6 nations. Gao Yiming, CGTN.
China and 5 Central Asian countries aim to boost cooperation in a variety of fields. Let's now take a look at some of these.
In 2022, China and the 5 Central Asia countries, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, launched the Data Security Cooperation Initiative during the China Central Asia Foreign Ministers meeting in Kazakhstan. The initiative calls for coordinated efforts to prevent threats to global data security and a comprehensive view of data security based on facts. It opposes the use of information technology to steal data of other countries or infringe on personal information. It says companies should abide by laws of other states, and cross-border data should be obtained through multilateral and bilateral agreements. The initiative also stresses that companies should not install backdoors in their products to illegally obtain users' data or force users to upgrade their systems and devices. Energy is another key area of cooperation. The 10,000-kilometer-long China-Central Asia natural gas pipeline, which runs from the border between Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan to West China's Horgoz, is the world's longest natural gas pipeline. By 2022, it had delivered more than 40 billion cubic meters of natural gas to China, replacing the use of 532 million metric tons of coal. The pipeline has guaranteed gas consumption for more than 500 million residents in 27 provinces and the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. Another major pipeline is the China-Kazakhstan oil pipeline, running from Adirau in Kazakhstan to West China's Alashankou, with a total length of over 2,800 kilometers. The pipeline delivers over 10 million tons of crude oil to China annually, playing an important role in China's energy security. The 6 countries have also made strides in agricultural technology cooperation. In Uzbekistan, China's drip irrigation technology has been widely used during this year's spring plow, improving crop yield and enhancing local food security. In Kazakhstan, China's wheat breeding technology has helped boost crop production. A special type of wheat developed by Chinese experts has maintained steady yields for years.
So a wide range of cooperation projects being mentioned there, and China and Central Asia have cooperated on security for years now. Security cooperation is definitely going to be another major focus at this year's China Central Asia Summit. What do you think the leaders will talk about, Professor?
Well, the security cooperation has been going on since the beginning of the diplomatic relations in the early 1990s, and when the 5 countries got independent from former Soviet Union, especially for the 3 countries that border with China. We're sharing a border as long as 3,200 kilometers. And then it was also a time, when Islamic fundamentalism was becoming prevalent, and terrorist actions were becoming prevalent in many parts of the world. And in fact, China's Xinjiang region was subject to such threats, and some of the very egregious incidents happened in Xinjiang, partly due to the Islamic fundamentalism and terrorism hidden in the Central Asian region. That's why China paid very important attention to working closely with Central Asian countries, especially the 3 countries that border with China, to make sure that the separatist, extremist forces are not going to spill over to the China side. But the way you do it, you cannot just put intensive pressure on cracking down against terrorism all day and all night. What you can alternatively do is to develop local economy. And China has always upheld this principle of nexus between development and security. Development is the precondition of security. That's why China began to invest in Central Asia, not just for the sake of Chinese economy, but for the sake of maintaining local, regional, and Chinese security. Mm-hmm. And now going to the more recent issue of Afghanistan, and two out of the 5 Central Asian countries are especially concerned about the issue of Afghanistan. That's Tajikistan and Uzbekistan.
How damaging is U.S. hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan to these countries?
Well, I think it's fair to say that the U.S. created this problem, or at least it is part of this Afghanistan problem. But then it left a vacuum, in Afghanistan, and which is now being governed by the Taliban, and China is still negotiating, working very intensively with the Taliban government. But what China and Tajikistan and Uzbekistan are mostly concerned is that the ISIS can still work out of terrorist plans in some regions, possibly in China. So that's our top concern, and we want to make sure that we work very closely with the two countries, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. In fact, not long ago, the foreign ministers of China, Iran, and Russia gathered in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, to talk about the Afghanistan development and security issues. That tells us that all these countries are concerned about Afghanistan problem, but overall, more broadly, the security cooperation is very key in the bilateral relations.
Definitely, and China has launched several initiatives to promote regional security. For example, the Global Security Initiative, that is one of them. How do you see China's role in it? How much can China help?
Before speaking of the Global Security Initiative, I want to mention my immediate thoughts about from the Data Security Initiative is that the United States should probably learn from China and Central Asian countries' efforts in protecting the data initiative. So this is a very good example that, while the United States is policing the world by doing this data surveillance even to the foreign country leaders, whereas China and the Central Asian countries have already realized the potential damage and security concerns about this data protection, and initiated these joint efforts to protect the data across the borders, across the countries. So this is a very good initiative that can be learned by the other countries. So this is the first point I want to make. And speaking of the the security initiative and the security cooperation, yes, since the independence of these Central Asian countries in the early 1990s, there have been some efforts by China and the Central Asian countries in the security cooperation. Mostly at that time, for the first 10 or 15 years, it was anti-terrorism. I'm not saying that the anti-terrorism is a finishing task right now, but certainly because of the Global Security Initiative proposed by China, I think we have entered into a next stage of security protection and security cooperation. And nowadays, the central task is definitely not the anti-terrorism because it's kind of stabilized. Of course, Afghanistan is a new turbulent issue created by the United States, but I can see the China and Central Asian countries having the same objective to contain the security problem within and Afghanistan and some security spillovers beyond Afghanistan. So these initiatives and these efforts have created some fruits. So this is the good point. On the other side, I think the security issues will continue along with the development problem. So if we take more efforts on both the development problem and the security problems, maybe these security issues can be tackled alongside the development initiative and the development potential and the cooperation between China and the Central Asian countries. So this is definitely creating a new momentum of between China and Central Asian countries. As I said, both sides have adopted